And the first one is, what did nature and the outdoors mean to you when you were young? And I have to be honest, when I was young, I was never that keen on being outside. We had a farm, we went there each weekend. My parents were always keen on us going out and hiking. But you know, I was more keen on watching some TV and playing with toys and doing stuff that all the other kids were doing. But I think that exposure to being outdoors started the seeds of my love for nature. And after I graduated from university and got a job as an engineer and realized it was about the most boring thing in the world I could be doing, I started guiding rafts, which was so fun on the weekends. And one thing led to another, and as I spent more and more time outdoors, it's just like meeting a new friend. You get to know them better and better. And after my first couple seasons of guiding in the Arctic for 100 days a season, I really realized that nature and wilderness were an important part of me and a place that I wanted to spend a good chunk of my life. The second part of that question was, did you have a life-changing experience or memory that made you fall in love with nature? Now, the guiding was a big part of it, being outside for so many days in a row, but I do remember being 13 years old. I grew up in Ontario, and my parents took me out to Victoria. My dad had a conference there for physics, and after he finished, we went into the mountains, and I'd never seen mountains being from Ontario, but it was rainy and overcast, so we couldn't see any of the peaks, and day after day it rained, and we begged our parents, please, let's not stay in a tent again, let's go to a motel. But no, Dad insisted we set up the tents, and we got to Glacier National Park near Rogers Pass, and it was pouring rain. And still we couldn't convince him to go to a motel. And I was in a little pup tent with my dad. My brother and sister and mom were in a slightly bigger tent. And in the morning, I woke up and there was no sound of rain, and we unzipped the front of the tent and I looked out, and there were these huge glacier-covered, snow-capped peaks. I'd never seen anything so massive, and I remember distinctly the awe I felt at that moment. And if I did have a formative moment in nature, a kind of initial falling in love, perhaps that was it. Second question is, did I speak a lot about the unknown and the importance of doing things that perhaps push you a little bit beyond your comfort zone? And do I remember when I made the conscious decision to live that way myself? Because I've done plenty of things. I mean, my life's always about being a little bit uncomfortable or challenged by new things. And the answer is no, I don't remember a conscious decision. Things were always outside my comfort zone. I wasn't particularly good at anything as a young kid, certainly not at sports, and certainly not at the outdoors. And because of that, I think I was pushed always to do things that stretched me a little bit. And I think once you get used to trying something that's beyond you, something that's new, and realizing you can learn and become self-reliant and adapt, it becomes a habit. And that's really what's shaped my life, because you know, I could have stayed in the easy path as an engineer, and I wanted to start guiding and being outdoors, and then I wanted to write a book, and everyone said, dude, you can never write a book, it's impossible. You failed English at high school, you failed typing, how can this ever happen? But I didn't listen and went off and typed this thing out, and lo and behold, it got published. And the same with photography. I was terrible at art. It was always one of my lowest marks, along with English at high school. But it was something that I loved and wanted to do, and just kept doing, and bit by bit learned the craft. The next question is one I get quite a bit. What was your scariest experience in the outdoors? Now, often if something's scary, you know, you've done something wrong. And I've been on the Nile in Ethiopia, where we had all types of crocodiles attacking our boats, and ice falls and avalanches and different things. But I would like to say that I generally try and be as safe as possible, of course, on these trips, and I'm probably very conservative in my decision making. So when something scary happens, something's gone wrong. So usually I've gone into the arena or the area knowing the risks, having a plan to counter them. A few times unexpected things come up, and the one that comes to mind was up on the Columbia ice fields probably about a decade ago. A friend and I were going to make an attempt on these peaks called the North and South Twin, and they weren't particularly difficult, but we got up there onto the ice cap after a day, and then a storm descended, and we were quite near a big drop, and the wind was just howling towards that drop, and we were pinned in our tent. We'd staked it down, we built ice stakes, we built a wall of snow around it, but it still didn't feel like the tent was going to stay up, and it was getting lifted up and slammed down all night, all the next day, all the next night, until there were 70 little holes in the bottom, or more little holes in the bottom of my tent. And I felt like any moment the stakes might release and we'd blow over the edge, but the storm eventually abated, and we were okay. Our anchors held. And on the other side it said, what was your most fun experience? And I love all aspects of the outdoors, but one thing I really love is water. I love rafting, kayaking, canoeing. I love being in splashy rapids on a hot day. And I grew up in Ontario and learned to paddle on the Ottawa River. So some of my funnest experiences, I think, were there where the water's so warm, you can paddle in t-shirts, in the shorts and a life jacket, nothing else. And it's safe, it's deep water. It's scary because it's big, but it's a load of fun. So I really had a lot of fun learning to paddle on the Ottawa. Now, fourth question, what would be your message for today's young people as to why they should spend more time outdoors? And I'm really not about telling anyone what they should or shouldn't do, and everyone should follow the path that interests them, but we're all part of this. And I know that growing up in the city, I didn't have a feeling for the beauty of the nature. It brings me peace. I'm not someone who can meditate and do too much yoga or go to too many lectures or museums, but when I come to the wilderness, this is a place where I really find my own personal peace and growth and chance to contemplate, and just the bird song we're hearing now and the wind and the aspens and every aspect. The more I come, the more I love it, the more it means to me, and I think it's where we've come from, and it's easy to forget that we are a part of nature and it's an important part of us. So it should never feel like an obligation, a duty, like homework to do to be outside, but if you can find some aspect that you do enjoy, something you enjoy, whether it's shooting photos, writing, collecting bugs, catching fish, just keep following that. You never know what will come from that. And the final questions are about photography, because I shoot lots of photos now as well as writing. And it says, how does nature inspire your work as a photographer? And for me, I learned to really photograph on a river called the Tatshenshini in northern BC in the Yukon. And the reason that I was learning so much was because we'd run the river. It was a 2-week trip. Then I'd go back to Whitehorse, have my film develop, see what worked, what didn't, then go back down the river again. I do that 5 or 6 times in a summer. And what was driving my interest in shooting these pictures was the way it made me feel. I would see things that I simply like here among the aspens, just the repeating trunks and the color of the green, and we'll see some lupins here in a little bit. I'll show you this beautiful wildflower. And I simply take pictures of things that I catch my eye, that I care about, that I love. So that's how nature inspires it. And it says, what do you look for when framing a shot to make it interesting? And there's all types of rules in photography. You look for converging lines. You think about placing things off the center, so there are the rule of a third, above or below the center line, or to one side of the shot. But I think rules are there to be broken. And the thing that interests me most in photography is telling a story, looking for some human moment. And I'll show you a couple here. There's one pouring coffee in these colored coffee cups we're using on this trip. And I got such a kick out of these cups because they were so colorful, but they're obviously old and ratty and have been along for a while. So I've got a picture here of someone pouring the coffee into those cups. And another one, a big part of this trip, was loading the horses each morning. We had 20 horses, and they have to be carefully loaded with the gear. We had 8 horses for riding and 12 for packing. And here's a shot of the cinch line coming over the horse, and the offside loader, as they're called, on one side reaching up for the cinch as it comes across, and the packer throwing it over, and other people around helping in the process. And I like that shot because there's action involved, and it's the decisive moment. The cinch is in the air, it's about to be caught and swung under the horse, and the load packed. So that's an answer to the questions that you've sent me. I hope you get a chance to get outside wherever you live across our country or wherever you are in the world, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.